is really having some trouble today. And that's kind of annoying. Are you going to stay? Or are you not? Maybe you will. Are the glasses not helping? Because I can't really see anything without them. Okay. Let's see if this will do enough. I don't have anything else to put up here to really help balance out the whiteness. I don't have like a big poster board I've used before or something like that. We're just going to have to run with it and hope that it can keep me where I need to be. There. Okay. Let's see. For the personal side of things, I mean, we just did this last week, and on a week-to-week basis, not all that much changes. I got to come out and try, this wildlife stuff, getting back to the video, which I was really excited about doing. I got through work, I did a good job at work, I think, this week. I got more done than the previous week, so that's good. Watching, same show. I haven't moved on to a different book or anything. Yeah, there's not much. Okay. The new game came out. I finished up Eastward last weekend, I think. Was it last weekend? Wait. I do write down dates of things. I started keeping kind of a log of everything. I actually finished 2 video games this week. Let's see. Yeah, for shows, I started something else, but nothing else. Eastward was completed the 5th, so yes. That was a good game. That was fun. Good story. Enjoyed that. And then I kind of just played around on Elden Ring, just kind of passing the time, because I did not want to start something else huge, knowing that I was going to drop it as soon as yesterday on Friday. I started playing the new Hogwarts game, which is so good. Yeah, I played for like an hour last night, and that was all I could do. That's all I had time for before dinner. I'll be playing it a lot this weekend. I really enjoy it so far. Trying to think. I read the Harry Potter books a couple of years ago last, I think. It wasn't that long ago, was the most recent one. And I've been meaning, I want to rewatch the movies. I really enjoyed that story. I grew up with it and connected with it very much from a young age. And I got really excited when the game came out because I played some of the Harry Potter games before and really enjoyed them. And they were really old, so it's not something that I want to revisit anytime soon. But this new one is like, ooh, it's immediately what I've wanted, definitely. So I'm very excited about that. I am disappointed with the amount of controversy that is around it and the way that the internet has taken it, because I don't think that that's necessary at all. I don't do a good job of, I can tell you right now, I will not do a good job of explaining all of that, the nuances, and there's just people who are better at explaining that kind of stuff and why I don't think it's the way that it, I do get the point of not wanting to support someone with horrible views. I do not agree with those views at all. And I can understand that, but at the same time, I also don't think that, I think you can separate the art from the artist, because it's massive. It was a cultural phenomenon. Like, I was very late to the game too. We were not allowed to have anything to do with Harry Potter growing up until I was probably 13. I want to say that it was around 13 or 14 when I finally was allowed to read the books for the first time. It was fantastic. So anyway, that I'm really enjoying. That's about the only thing that is different from last week to like talk about personally, catch up on. The second video game that I completed. Oh boy. So I've talked about how I ride the exercise bike 4 days a week for 45 minutes. And I play a video game to distract myself because it's boring and I don't enjoy exercising. And I was playing all the Pokemon games, and I finished those. I made a whole video about it. And then I moved on, and really I would like to play the Mega Man games, the Battle Network Mega Man games, because I really enjoyed those when I was growing up, and they are releasing a Legacy Collection on Switch this year in just a few months, but I needed something back in November, December. So I started playing the Legend of Zelda games, which means I'm going to play Mega Man at another point, but Legend of Zelda. I might make a video on that as well, because it's kind of an interesting story, the whole thing. But anyway, I played through the first one, and it was fine. Not fantastic, but, it's also, 30 years old? Is it older? When did the first Legend of Zelda come out? Anyway, very old. But then I played the second one. And I've heard plenty about how the second one is not. The Adventure of Link is not the same kind of game. It's not great. And I owned it because I bought it for Game Boy Advance when they re-released it as an NES classic. I bought that, and just to dip into, the Legend of Zelda. If I make a video about all of that, which I might, who knows. The story is basically that I got a Game Boy at, 11 or 12, and I knew about some Game Boy games because I had a friend who owned them, and we played a Legend of Zelda game, and all I knew was it was called Legend of Zelda. So I bought the first Legend of Zelda. I was like, well, this is definitely not what we played. I remember what it looked like, and this was not it. So I bought the second one, again, these NES classic ones, and that wasn't it either. And that one I did not enjoy very much. I at least played a bit more the first one. I didn't get very far. I was very young, and it was very difficult. And the second one was insane. So I did not really touch Adventure of Link again, ever. I had no interest in doing so. I got Link to the Past and just played that so much. But going back through this stuff, the same way where I missed Pokemon games, I figured if I'm going to start this series, I'm going to play through it, let me play everything. So I played through the first one. Then I get to the second one. And the second one is just awful. I don't like talking about things negatively. If it's something I don't like, I just go, okay, I don't like this. I'm not going to force myself to do it. Why? I'd rather spend time doing things that I enjoy. But because I made this goal of going through it, I came close a few times to going, this isn't worth it. But I managed to play through the whole game. Not fun. Not good. Don't recommend it, but I did it. I got all the way through it. It took a lot longer than the first one, time-wise, and there was a lot. I could not have done it. I'm playing it on the 3DS. I could not have done it without that virtual console allowing me to do restore saves. It would straight up would not have been fun. I mean, it already really wasn't. But it would not have even been close to being possible without the ability to save right before you go into a fight and then do the fight. And if I take damage, go, all right, start over. And that sucks. There's just a lot of replaying it. There's a lot of doing stuff over and over and seeing how far you can get and then doing it over. Because starting over back there, it's not the same, from my understanding, it's not the same system where when you die, you have to start back at the beginning of the dungeon. There was that, but you also there's also a life counter. And when you lose all your lives, it wipes your levels and experience and puts you back to 3. And it's like, I'm not grinding all of that. There was already so much grinding already just to make the game playable because everything was just kicking my ass over and over. Even more difficult than, some of the more difficult games that I've played, like Dark Souls, that franchise. Anyway, I finished it on Thursday. I got all the way done. I finished it. I beat the last boss. Totally done. Just ready to move on. And just instantly turned on Link to the Past on Friday, yesterday when I got on the bike. And I'm just like, I like this so much more. I remember this. I can play through this. I've played through it so many times. Just a fantastic game. So I did that. That was great. I don't think I've done anything else recently that's noteworthy or much of anything because, again, it's only been a week. But I looked through the list of questions to come up with a topic to talk about today, and something jumped out at me, which was really interesting. We're going to talk about this one, but not quite in the way that I think this question was meant. It's the question that's written down here. I'm highlighting it so that I highlight all the ones that I've answered so I don't do the same. The question was, which of your flaws are you most proud of? To which I went, what? None of them. Why? Why would you be proud of a flaw? Why is that I get that people are different. I get that everyone has, their quirks or however you want to define it. Each person is different in some way. But a flaw would objectively be bad to me. I have many flaws. I am a flawed individual. Every human being is. There is no perfect human being. No one is perfect, but I don't understand being proud of the flaws. I understand being proud of going, well, the other side of it, if it's not a flaw, but it is a character trait maybe or something like that, and it's different. You're not normal. I get that, right? Like normal is boring as well as perfect is boring. So I get not being average in that way and having your own personality and being your own person in that way. But to me, flaws inherently negative. Overeating, one of my flaws. For a long time, that was a big part of my life, and I got extremely overweight, and that's a flaw. I'm not proud of that. I'm proud of recognizing it and overcoming it. I'm not all the way there, but I am so close compared to where I was. I mean, I for the most part, I probably weighed over 300 pounds for most of my adult life until a couple of years ago where I started losing weight and working out and getting to a healthier shape. I'm proud of that. I'm not proud of the flaw. And I'm sure that there are other, again, I try not, that's a flaw. Focusing on the negative to me is a flaw. I'm going to plug this thing in so it doesn't die. And that's a lot of people who just dwell on the negative. And it's very easy to do. I definitely have done it before, and I have made that, it's been an effort. Oh no, I bumped it real bad. It has been quite an effort to try to overcome that flaw and to focus on the positive, to become a positive person. That's what I want. That's what I strive towards. I don't always make it. I used to be a lot angrier than I was, just irrationally, or I let myself get to that point where I was too angry too much, and I don't want that. That's a flaw. I'm not proud of that. I'm proud of recognizing that and overcoming that. I'm not all the way there. There are still things that set me off, but I try not to complain, not to talk about things that bother me, and to just put a positive spin on stuff, because that to me is better. I don't enjoy the flip side of that. So it's weird. It's a weird question to ask, what flaws are you proud of? I'm fine talking about the flaws. I'm trying to think of anything else that comes to mind to see if there's anything else that really bears conversation. Talking about flaws. Being overweight, being lazy. I mean, not having a purpose or a drive. I'm not proud of that flaw. That's an extremely common one, especially in today, where you see there are the people who go out and do everything, and that just depresses the ones who don't. That was me several years ago. I'd try. I would think of ideas, but not, put forward anything. But I'm not proud of that stuff. I'm proud every day I go out and do something instead of staying home and mindlessly doing the same things over and over. I am proud of who I have become at this point compared to who I was, where I was even more flawed than I am now. And I don't have any secret to success or anything like that. I don't have any tips for anyone who's trying to do that. Really, this is just what worked for me, was that the mental changes, slowly taking it one step at a time to become where I'm at now. And that's something that what I just went through with the talking about the video games and things like that, all of that is me tracking stuff now, because my memory's not nearly as good as it was, and I know it's only going to get worse. That is age. That is how your brain works. So I'd rather take a few seconds and write down the name of the show that I'm currently watching, and then put the date when I finished it, so that I can look back and go, look at how many shows I watched, look at how many books I read, look at how many new pieces of music I listened to, and not just absorb, and not just had on, but actually mindfully absorbed and paid attention to all of these stories in different ways. Because that's really, that's how I kind of think about it. They're all just different stories. It doesn't, a book is a story, and the story that they're telling on TV, the story, in the show or movie, whatever it may be. And that's something that I wasn't tracking it until last year, but I was more mindfully watching things, and especially pieces of content in certain ways. I started that back, was it before we moved from Georgia? It may have been, or maybe it didn't start until Wyoming. No, I think it was Georgia because it was HBO launched, HBO Max, which has gone to crap now with the way that they're canceling things and just. But anyway, when it launched, it was awesome. It was a great streaming service. It wasn't expensive as much as all the other ones have all raised prices up and everything, and they had a ton of stuff. And one of the things that they had was Studio Ghibli movies. And I'd always heard about them, but the only one I'd watched was Totoro back in the day. And it was like, yeah, that's a great, great kids movie and stuff like that. And I didn't know about any of these other ones or anything. I was just like, these are held up as some of the best animated movies of all time and some of the best storytelling of all time. I should watch these. And so I did. And I went, I'm going to watch everything. And so I looked up every list of works that they had and every single thing that I could find. The only one that I couldn't find on there, but it was streaming on another platform back in the day, was Grave of the Fireflies. I think that was the name of it. Which is, oh man, that is a story. That is not for children. That is very dark. But man, it was good. And I'm almost through them all at this point. I dropped off for a while, but it became kind of a routine where like Sunday afternoon, I'm not going out if I'm not doing anything there, or if I've done it in the morning. I've come back, I've showered and put away all my camera stuff, and I don't want to jump straight into editing. Maybe just because I need to get it processing, I'll grab the footage, anything that I shot, whatever it was that day, and start the transfer and start the backup to my computer. But then I go and I make myself a nice meal, because that is a common theme in those movies, especially, is really good food, and it makes me hungry to watch them. So I do that, and I make myself a meal, and I'd sit down and watch a movie for 2 hours. And I don't usually do that. I haven't watched movies for years. And the last time I was watching movies, I was trying to watch movies. Oh man, I was working a job a few years ago where I was basically the youngest person, and I worked with a lot of guys who were maybe not quite twice my age. I was probably 25 and they were in their 40s. So there was a generational difference. And we just talked because the job was so boring. You could talk all day long easily, and it did happen easily. And you got a lot of older guys who would talk about that stuff and their generational differences. And so it was like, all right, I haven't seen, 9 times a week, 10 times a week, whatever it was. It'd be like, oh, have you seen this movie? It's like, well, no, of course not. We didn't really have a lot of TV when I was growing up, so I didn't watch a lot of movies either. But these are older, 80s movies, 90s movies, things like that. And they're so good. And they're talking about classic ones that are, Anyway, I told them, I was like, fine, make me a list. I will just start watching movies. Anything I can find on any streaming service, anything you guys say, whatever you put on this list, I will watch it at some point. I will try to make the time. And so I burned through 50 or 60 movies that year, because I would put them on and I would mostly watch that. And then I'd be playing Elder Scrolls Online and just grinding through dungeons and things like that. Something completely mindless so that I can mostly focus on that. And so I mostly absorbed the movie, but I still had to look. I'm doing the opposite of that now, where I'm carving out time and going, I am going to watch this show. I am not going to just put on the same show that I watch all the time. I am going to actively watch, and that is the only thing. I will not be on my phone. I'm not going to be doing anything else. It is a single task, and I want to pay attention to this. And I've made a lot of progress, and I've watched a lot of things since then. I've enjoyed a lot. It's been really fun. And the Studio Ghibli movies were kind of part of that. But before that was all these other movies, these older movies like Heat. And that's a good movie. That was cool. I'm trying to think of some of the others. I watched a ton of Christopher Nolan's early movies. I knew about him. I knew about the Batman movies, but I watched all like Memento and did he do Prestige? Maybe that one? There were a bunch, and I wasn't tracking it at that point. I had that list, but that list is older. I need to actually go back and see if I can find that. That would have been before I started doing, I have an app that I use that's end-to-end encryption. I'm trying to switch as much as I can away from big tech companies' cloud storage that gets leaked, you're spied upon, all this stuff. I'm just trying to move to my own stuff and go back to what the internet, in my opinion, worked better as back in the day. Not everything is better back in the day, but that one especially. So anyway, I need to look back through my old notes. I've got old notes on probably Google Drive that was where I made that list. I mean, it was a physical list. It was a pad of paper that I put on a clipboard and hung on the wall, and it was like Michael's to Watch or something like that. And everyone would come up and be like, putting this down for you, you're going to like this movie. And I'd watch it and be like, yep, great movie. And I never made it all the way through that list because eventually that grew to be, well over 100. But it also it's kind of a conversation starter because if one person came up and went, this is a great movie, I'm going to put it on there, and the other people didn't agree, oh boy, are you about to get it. Because they would start going, that's not a good movie. What are you doing putting that on there? It's like, all right, calm down. But it was fun. And I watched a lot of stuff that way, movies and TV shows. I think it was mostly focused on movies. But yeah, that was a good time. I need to go back and see if I can find that so I can add whatever I haven't watched off of there, and also, to keep everything going forward, I need to move that to my most current list and just put that as a watched before I was keeping track of this stuff. But part of that, again, watching things that I never have, Star Wars. I enjoyed Star Wars. Great Star Wars. Always, that's like one of the top tier. Right up there. I mean, I talked about how much Harry Potter kind of influenced me, but Star Wars was even more so. I talk about going to see movies and dressing up. We did that for Harry Potter. Also did that for Star Wars. Did that for one of the Matrix movies too at one point. But anyway, Star Wars, I only basically watched the movies though and played the games, whatever I could get my hands on with that stuff, because Star Wars was huge. And I read books back in the day as well. There's so many of that expanded universe, which was another, just a side note. Who cares if it's canon? Why was that necessary? What is it? Like, I get going, okay, we want to tell a story, and so that stuff is not going to be part of the story anymore. That's basically what they're going for. But the way it was done was enough that it caused so much angst. That's the wrong word, but as an insult, being like, well, it no longer exists, it no longer matters. And it's like, well, that's not how I see it. So I don't really care when they're like, well, this isn't canon. It's like, cool, but it was a good story, right? Like, I remember reading some of the what were they called? Were they Young Jedi? It was very young adult. It was some of the first books I read, but it was like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon when Obi-Wan was like a young Padawan. I was like, well, this is awesome. Anyway, I've been trying to make it through everything that I can. Every piece of Star Wars, canon, not canon, I don't care. I've never watched any of the shows, so I didn't see Clone Wars. I've now seen all of Clone Wars. Clone Wars is awesome. And I'm currently working my way through Rebels. And I'm watching Bad Batch. It's airing. It just came out. The 2 episodes this week, oh man. You talk about good stuff. They did kind of a 2-parter, like an arc. They released 2 episodes this week of, today is February the 11th. Wow, is it the 11th already? I was wrong when I had to, GoPro popped up being like, manually enter today's date, and I guessed it was the 9th. Not even close. I mean, technically close in the grand scheme of things. But anyway, today's the 11th. So this week for Bad Batch, which was the Star Wars animated show that's coming out. And we've got more Mandalorian coming. Mandalorian, oh man, so good. That comes out in a few weeks at the beginning of March. But anyway, that has nothing to do with flaws. That's just what I've been doing. I've been more mindfully watching shows and kind of enjoying content more actively instead of passively. I still have, I've just nonstop, I will tell you right now, my schedule of wake up, start working, work 10 hours, get done, ride the bike, take a shower, get done with the shower, go out to the TV, play a game for a little bit, and then when it's time to cook dinner, during cooking, and then eating, because eating while I'm watching something, also a distraction. I got to look at what I'm eating. I'm not looking at what's on the screen. I'm not absorbing that stuff. I'm more focused on the food. So the show that I put on while I'm cooking, while I'm eating, before I get to actually watching the full show, has been Bob's Burgers, because that's just a fantastic show. And that's one of my top all-time, like, if I had to pick a few shows to put on in the background, it would be Bob's Burgers, it would be Futurama, probably The Office. One of those that goes on as a passive kind of listening more so than watching. There'd probably be a few others, but those also were what I just used to watch every day. I would sit down to eat and be like, well, this is what I'm watching until I go to bed. And I would just watch the same shows over and over and over. And those were the shows. But specifically, watch that, get done with dinner, all that stuff, and then put on an episode of whatever I'm currently watching. Usually movies stay towards the weekends when it's time to watch a movie. But TV shows I can knock out 30, 45 minute or an hour, which is where I've been watching Man in the High Castle. So good. Right at the end of season 2 almost. Man, stuff is kicking off. Whew. Anyway. So that's been the, that's where I kind of do that stuff. And also while I'm at work, because the job is kind of off and on how busy it gets and how I can do, some tasks so I listen to podcasts or, listen to music and things like that. But again, I listen to music that I've already heard. I don't want to put on, a new album that I've never heard before or anything like that. And I'm trying to actively go back because music was not a part of my life almost at all growing up. Didn't really listen to any of that. I just picked a few songs. I think digging through my archives on my backup server, I found my old music folder, which was just if I heard a song that somebody else, one of my siblings, sister siblings, one of my siblings would have, I remember some of that, but never really it was never something I was that actively engaged in. People would be, if I had an iPod and that was just kind of the random stuff. People would be like, oh, what do you listen to? And I'm like, oh, I don't want to talk about that because it's not really a genre. It's not really a particular band. It's just this mix of random stuff. And it would just be like one song here or there. It was not actively enough to the point where, and I would almost never listen to music either. Like it was not at all a thing that I would sit down and go, now I'm going to enjoy a piece of music. It would just be background. I remember playing the original Grand Theft Auto, the top-down pixelated one, just driving around. I wasn't doing missions. I didn't do anything. I just drove around and did that. But I would do that for hours with the They Might Be Giant CD on repeat. I listened to that tons, and that was just how I played the game. And I still do things like that, especially things that are like Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk was amazing. I finished Cyberpunk last month. That was a fantastic game. Why could you not listen to the radio the entire time? You're basically a robot. You're a full cyborg. You got implants of everything in that game. You got all this stuff, but you can't just turn on the radio in your head. And you get into a car, and it does not have the feature like Grand Theft Auto did, one of the newer ones. Or, was it Grand Theft Auto? There was one where you would just go, this is the station I want to listen to. And so whenever you got in a car, your character would automatically basically turn on. Like, you would just have that music playing. You could choose your own soundtrack. And so, like, I would hear some ones, but I didn't want to listen to the talk radio when I'm driving around. I wound up muting that entirely through the game and just taking into my headphones where I've got multiple audio sources anyway. I just wound up putting on a YouTube playlist of like cyberpunk themed music, that kind of aesthetic. And that was just, I instantly went from like, this is a good game to this is an amazing game. That's how much of a difference it made. Just driving around, going through the stuff. I'd turn it down when it came to a mission and I was doing dialogue and I would, do stuff like that. But anyway, music has come a lot more into my life as not just background music, but actively listening. And some of the things, like I'll listen to musicals if I've heard it before. I'm very big. I did a lot of theater stuff, so I have no problem with musical theater, and I very much enjoy Broadway shows and things like that. The soundtracks, that's been constant for getting through work and the stuff that, putting something on in the background, essentially. Anyway. Hamilton was amazing. Wicked. Trying to think. Book of Mormon. That's fantastic. It's just ones that I find and put on a playlist specifically so I can just sit down and listen to all of that stuff. But the first time I ever heard them, I did not. And that may have been the turning point, honestly, because I did not want to hear anything to do with Hamilton until I was ready to actually sit down and listen to the whole thing. It was not something, like I didn't want people to, what was the first introduction I ever had to that, because I'd heard of it, but I didn't listen to it in any way. It was when we had a family gathering at my dad's house and got real drunk and then went out to the car at, like midnight and started blasting it and singing along. And I didn't know anything about it, but I remember being very drunk, and I remember going out and getting in the car and doing my best to sing along with that stuff, which I also don't really sing at all. So if I do, I do it in a very jokey way, where it's either as deep as I can go or as falsetto as I can go, and it's even more fun when I switch back and forth between the two. That's very common for me to do, because I don't actually enjoy the sound of my own voice singing. So anyway, Hamilton, I think, was the first one where I ever went, I'm going to do this. And I sat down, we had the book that had all the lyrics and the behind the scenes stuff and whatnot. And so it had visuals to it as well. And I sat down and I put on the soundtrack into headphones and I just listened to it. And it was amazing. And that has spawned, that has gone all the way to the point where I'm listening to things constantly. I've got a lot of stuff, and I just made an upgrade to my audio so that I have a nice DAC and amp. I have really nice headphones. Like, that was my tax return. I think I may have talked about that last week, that I got a tax return because I did not commit tax fraud. And I did not screw up my taxes and wound up owing money. So I actually got some back, and I went, what can I use this on to benefit? Oh, I listen to music at least 40 hours a week. I have headphones on. I'm either in a meeting or I'm listening to music or podcast or whatever it is while I'm sitting there at the computer for work. This will benefit me more than just about anything else because I will use this more than anything else. So I got some really nice Sennheiser headphones with the whole thing and the balanced audio and sounds immediately like the difference between what I was using, which was just like some cheap headphones that were open back, and I was just like, well, this works, and they were nice, and I really like that upgrade, to listening, and it just immediately sounds open and wide and clear, and you can hear the instruments, and like put on the Tron soundtrack immediately to test it from the movie, the one that Daft Punk did. I was like, oh man, this music's awesome. Yeah. I think the first time I ever started using music as a way to distract me from work, because work is often boring, is when I was working at Walmart. I specifically remember putting on music in my headphones. That may have been the first time where I signed up for a streaming service, which, was it Spotify? No, there was another one. Oh man, what was that one? I haven't thought about that one in years. I knew of it from some people, and they were like, yeah, they play ads, but they're so few. And then it got to the point where they were playing ads all the time, back before I could afford anything. I mean, my money was just straight up rent, food, done. There was no extra, like, let me sign up for a streaming service, or let me, that was it. I didn't even have Xbox Live at that point because I couldn't afford it. I made so little money, and I just did not have any. Which is stupid, paying to play online when you can do it for free on PC, and like, it's still a stupid concept. At least they've come to the point where you get free games at this point, but I still don't care for it very much. At least Game Pass makes it very much worth it, in my opinion. Anyway, I do not remember the name of the other app. Something radio, maybe. But yeah, it was one of the, or maybe I was using that one, and then somebody was like, oh, Spotify is even better, and they play way less ads, and so maybe I switched to Spotify at that point. I started using it. But working at Walmart, I specifically remember working at Walmart and putting in headphones. You couldn't do it when you were on the floor, when you were interacting, when a customer could ask you a question or anything like that, even if you worked overnight, even though some people got away with it and put in one earbud anyway. And I would also do that too. I definitely did that after I saw other people doing it. But yeah, when I went to day shift, I couldn't get away with that. But during day shift, I would often get pulled off of that to go stock things in the back. And one of the things was the milk fridge, the cooler for the dairy cooler, I guess, because it was a huge walk-in area. And it was just like, oh, I'm here for like 4 hours? Cool. Headphones in, let's just listen to stuff and work and get this stuff done. Yeah. That was probably the first time that I went back to music, and it was like, not just in the car, but because I didn't listen to music for a long time in the car, because one of my older cars didn't have radios. One of them did, and then I broke it trying to install a new faceplate, and then I could just never get it to work again. Or a new head unit. That was the car that I bought from a guy who had he hooked it up with a subwoofer in the back. He installed like a wood panel board and bolted down this gigantic subwoofer, and then put in speakers and stuff. That car, it's a good thing that didn't last for very long, because I would turn that up too loud. I was not polite. That may be something that was a flaw, and I've come completely so far the other way that it will annoy the people I'm with, where I'm like, no, turn that down. They're like, it's not that loud. It's like, it's loud enough that you can hear it outside the car. You're probably disturbing somebody. Let's not do that. Let's not disturb others. There's no reason to crank it up that loud or to do anything. It's just unnecessary. And I will be that guy. Because I will do that. There was one time I was listening to it too loud. I guess too loud, but maybe it was just because it was late at night. I didn't think it was too loud. I tried to keep it down. And that was something, especially when I first bought the car. My dad was like, all right, kid or junior, whatever nickname he was calling me at that point. And he said something, he was like, you bumping the ridiculous bass and things like that from the subwoofer and stuff. And so we tested it, and he walked farther away from the car, and then I turned the volume up, and he was like, all right, that's good. And then he got a little closer. He was like, turn it down. And we kind of set those levels there, basically. He told me how loud to make it so that I did not. But then I was driving home one night, and it was very late, and I'm just going around, in a neighborhood, or not neighborhood, but just like driving through a main road that has neighborhoods on all sides back in Georgia, and all of a sudden I see all these blue lights. I'm like, oh, shit, what's that? Turn down turned down the music real quick and everything. And yeah, the police car basically just saying, hey, turn it down, because I wasn't speeding and they didn't come after me or anything. I did not get pulled over. But that actually may be more related to last week's topic about crimes. That's probably the closest I've ever come to actually getting in trouble, was because I had the music too loud. And immediately I was just like, oh, no music the rest of this trip. Cool. It's like an hour drive. Didn't do it. And now I don't listen to music all that much anymore in the drive on the car, because I'm trying to focus on the road and stuff, or if I'm recording. And also, music sometimes doesn't work. I did listen to music on the drive here. I listened to the soundtrack to the Moonlighter game, which I really enjoy. Anyway, less about the topic today of flaws and that. It's just a weird thing to me to be proud of a flaw. I do get being proud of the individualism, being proud of that stuff, but to me, a flaw by design, why would you be proud of that? Oh, this is cut off. Did it overheat? I bet it did. Well, that's okay. You know what? That's why we have you now. So I can go back and forth between the two. And I could mount this up here if I wanted to. I'm not going to, because we're wrapping up anyway. But if I needed to, since I've got something that overheats. Yeah, you've overheated, haven't you? Ooh, you are hot. Ooh, ow. I have this one now. I have a backup that I can do. Wow, that front screen, really, it's very choppy. That's interesting. That's fine. I assume it's still recording the 4K 60 from the back. Wow, that's bright. Ooh, okay, sunglasses going back on. Anyway, that is the personal vlog for today. Talked about a weird question that I don't really understand personally. I just don't get it. Hopefully that comes across. I don't know if I always come across that well. Maybe other people will see it and be like, no, you be proud of your flaws. That what makes you a human. I'm like, well, you can definitely be proud of the other things, but flaws themselves, things that are viewed negatively, not by other people. Other people can view something as a flaw that you might not view as a flaw. Maybe that's the point that they're trying to get at there. Because you shouldn't just change yourself based on what other people think unless you are negatively impacting other people. Be yourself as long as you're not hurting anyone else. Who cares otherwise? You shouldn't hurt other people. Like, if what you're doing, if you're like, I'm proud that I'm loud and obnoxious, or other people find me loud and obnoxious, and it's like, yeah, okay. But if you're hurting someone, that's not really a flaw. They might be hurting someone, but I don't particularly enjoy hanging around people that I find too loud or obnoxious, because I'm more of a quiet individual who sits in a car by himself and talks for 30, 45 minutes about things that pop into his head. Now I'm going to drive home because I'm hungry. I had 2 bananas this morning. Now, you just turned off your screen, but you're still blinking red. You better still be recording. That's fine. Man, technology sometimes. Anyway, I'm going to go home and I'm going to eat. I'm going to make a big sandwich, I think. Because I can eat how I want to on the weekends, more or less. I still have to kind of cut that back if I'm trying to lose weight. I can't go totally crazy and do like I used to and be like, I'm going to eat an entire box of pasta. A pound of pasta. That was a regular meal for me. Talk about flaws that I'm not proud of. Talk about my overeating and how bad it was for me and how much damage I probably did to myself. Well, better not. How often did I eat an entire box of pasta? I don't think I would do that. It usually would be 2, but then you're talking about at least a half a pound. That's a lot. Or, no, I don't. Did I ever do more than I would just make 1 cup of rice for myself. I don't think I ever really did more than that. I think I would make more than 1 cup of rice if I was making multiple meals or I was making it for more than one person. I don't know if I regularly. I used to be really overweight and I used to eat really bad. And I don't really do that much anymore. I still get to have a bit of fun on the weekends, the 2 days that are there. But then 5 days a week it is rice, vegetables, and beans mostly for here. A lot more vegetables than anything else, and salads. A lot of salads. Did I get my celery this week in this week grocery pickup? I hope so. Because I have like a salad with baby carrots. That's usually part of my lunch. Anyway, that's going to do it for today, I think. That's enough of that. I will put this in the mount next time so that if I need to switch cameras mid-recording, I can easily make that switch over. So yeah, good times. Good stuff. Again, I'm trying to get in the habit of remembering to make sure, because not everybody's going to check the comments, and especially if you're on mobile, I almost never, or the description. But if you want to ask a question, it could be about anything. I'm more than happy to have a conversation. I'm more than happy. Why did I take these off? I need these to drive. Anyway, you can email me. You can leave a comment. You can do whatever you want. Or you can just sit and enjoy and put this on in the background to help get through your day and check out how somebody else's life is going on, because that's a lot of what I do as well. Anyway, thank you. Bye-bye.